Hi guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. So today I'm going to do the Alphabet Soup book tag. This is a tag that was created by Sean the Maniac, and I will link the original video and his channel down below in the description box. But he, I'm guessing, is going to put out more of these tags, but for this one he started with the letter A, and so this is all about different books that correlate with the letter A in different ways, and I thought it was just something a little different and interesting, so stick around and we'll get into it. So the first prompt for this tag is A is for author, and this is to find a book with an author whose name begins with an A, preferably their last name, because first names commonly start with A, but it's a little bit more difficult to find one that author's last name that starts with an A, and bonus points if you can get both the first and last name both starting with A. I looked through my shelves and I didn't have any whose first and last name both started with A, but I found a few whose last name started with A. And so for this one, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys Diane Ackerman's The Zookeeper's Wife. This is one that I picked up at a thrift store recently. I have not read this yet, but I'm very much looking forward to reading this. It is a World War II historical fiction. But yeah, other than that, I don't know a whole lot more about it. I know that it is based off of true events, and it is about a couple, maybe a lady and her husband possibly, who hide Jews in animal cages at a zoo that was destroyed in the war, and so they kind of save them by giving them animal names. That's my understanding of it, but like I said, I haven't read it yet, so I'm not real sure. But anyway, Diane Ackerman starts with A, so I found one for that. The next prompt is A is for, well, A. Name the last book that you read with the word A in the title. And so I went through my Goodreads, what I've currently read, and the last book that I read that has an A in the title is Betsy Was a Junior by Mudheart Lovelace. This is one that I read as part of the Betsy Tacy read-along that I'm taking part in this year, and this was the last book that I read with an A. Betsy Was a Junior, and this is book number 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think. It's book number 7 in the Betsy Tacy series, and it's just about Betsy during her junior year of high school. And so, yeah, this was a really, really great one. I definitely liked Betsy Was a Junior more than the other 2 high school age Betsy Tacy books that I've read so far. So you will get my opinions about that in my upcoming July wrap-up, because I just recently read that. So the next prompt is A is for angry. Name a book that pissed you off. And so for this, I have this book, but I have lent it out to a friend, and so I will put a picture up here. But I decided to go with Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. This was a book that just, the topic of it made me mad. It wasn't that the book was a bad book or that the writing was bad or anything like that, but this is a book about a 13 or 14-year-old girl during World War II from Lithuania who is sent to a work camp in Siberia as part of the Russian front of World War II. And so her and her mom and her brother are all sent to this labor camp in Siberia in Russia, and the way that they are treated and what is expected of them and what they did or didn't do to get to that point was just something that just boiled my blood, and it made me so angry on behalf of her and her family and the way that they were being treated. And so this is definitely one that made me angry, and it is a fantastic book. If you have not checked out this or Salt to the Sea, both by Ruta Sepetys, please do. They are absolutely wonderful if you like historical fiction. So that is my answer for that. The next prompt is A is for awesome. What is a top read of yours of recent years? Specifically one that you haven't really talked about much on your channel. And so for me, This is one that I do not own yet, unfortunately, but I do have my eyes out for it in a couple different places. I want to try to see if I can get it on the cheap. But one of my all-time favorite reads of last year, and something that really impacted my way of thinking and my life, is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. This is a book. I had heard of Trevor Noah. I knew he was a celebrity. I didn't know his story. I've never watched his show. I didn't really know his comedy style, nothing like that. I actually didn't even listen to this audiobook as much as I like audiobooks, and I've heard great things about this audiobook. I did not listen to this audiobook. I read actually the ebook of it, and it is one that profoundly just opened my eyes to something that I had no idea about. This is a story of Trevor Noah's life. He was literally born a crime. He was born in South Africa during apartheid. His mom was black, his mom was black and his dad was white, and them having a child together was a punishable crime during that time. And so he was born a crime. And it's just his story about growing up in South Africa during apartheid, struggling with his identity because he was colored, he wasn't black, and he wasn't white, and he didn't really fit in with any of those groups. And he has a gift with languages, so he understood a lot of the native tribal tongue or languages of the black different tribes of the Africans. And so he kind of fit in with them in that way, but they just didn't accept him as one of theirs. And so he had a really, really hard time with his identity growing up. And it went through the atrocities that happened during apartheid, which I am completely horrified and embarrassed to let you know that I had no idea what apartheid was until I read this book. And it's something that is not really talked about in American schools. And if it is, it's glossed over and just kind of swept under the rug, and it's not something that we talk about at all. And I think that that's a huge disservice, and it was something that really kind of brought that to light for me, and something that I'm kind of passionate about now, about how horribly the American school system educates their students on worldwide historical events that have happened in recent history, not necessarily hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but recent historical events. And so that's a whole other tangent I could get on. But anyway, so I had no idea what apartheid was until I read this book. And after reading this book, I eventually started looking into it more and was just, it's something that changed my life. And the writing style is funny because he is a comedian. And so it's funny, but it's profound at the same time. And it's very impactful the way that he is able to deliver his message. And I think that this book specifically really hit home for me because he lives in America now, and so he's seen both sides of it. He's lived in kind of the slums of South Africa, and he's lived, the life of a celebrity in America, and he's seen both perspectives, and he is able to kind of give you the history from a subjective yet objective view, if that makes sense. And so it was just one that I loved, and if you haven't read it, please do. It is something that I think everybody could get something out of. And so, yeah, that was one of my favorite books. That was a long answer to a simple question, but there you go. All right. A is for Aaah, a book whose title includes at least 3 A's, bonus if there's more than 3. So I scoured my shelves trying to find a book that had at least 3 A's in it. And that's harder than you might think. I really didn't have very much. And so I did grab one. This is kind of a sneak peek to my monthly thrift haul, if you will. But this past weekend, I stopped at our local Goodwill and I grabbed Anne of Avonlea, and it has 1, 2, 3 A's. And so there you go. I have not read this yet. I am on a mission to find all of the Anne of Green Gable books at thrift stores. And so this is not my favorite copy of this book, but it was 23 cents at Goodwill. And so I bought it anyway, because what's on the inside is what counts, and what's on the inside is the same as every other copy of this book. And so anyway, yeah, I have not read it yet, but It has 3 A's. So there you go. All right. The next one, A is for annoying. Name a character who drove you up the wall. And so for this, let me find the book. Okay. For this, I decided to go with the character of Edith in Hum If You Don't Know the Words. This is a book that I read in the month of June with Krista from Books and Jams. And this is hands down one of my top 5 books of the year so far, if not the top book I've read so far this year. This is another book set in apartheid, or during apartheid in South Africa. Who'd have thunk? But this book was so beautifully written. The phraseology, the impact that Bianca Marais has with her words is just so beautiful. And in this book, we follow Robin, who is a little white girl who is 9 years old. And we follow Beauty, who is a black woman who is 49 years old. And Robin's parents early in the book are killed by a couple of black boys. And Beauty is on a mission to find her missing daughter. Her daughter's gone missing during the Soweto, I think is how you pronounce it, youth uprising. Her daughter goes missing, so she's on a mission to find her daughter. And through the book, through their 2 different stories, their lives cross paths. But the character in this book that I found extremely annoying was Robin's Aunt Edith. And she goes to live with her Aunt Edith after her parents are killed. Edith is her mom's sister. And Edith does not want a child. The child is cramping her lifestyle. She is an airline stewardess, and she likes to travel, and she likes to live the single life. And Edith just does not have a care for anyone in the world but herself, and I found her so insanely annoying throughout this book. She would pop up here and there and just say absolutely ridiculous things. Kristen and I, when we were talking about this book, when we were reading it together, we would both comment, we're like, anymore, by the end of the book, you're just rolling your eyes every time Edith graces the page because she's just so obnoxious. But yeah, anyway, so Edith was not my favorite character, but I see her purpose in the book at the same time. I see the purpose of her being the way she is. However, she was annoying, to say the least. So, once again, if you haven't checked this one out, do. Please, please do. All right. The next one is A is for Ambivalent, a book you're still not sure how you feel about. And I forgot to grab this one down. It's up here. There we go. This one, I'm going with one that I just finished reading last weekend, maybe? And that's Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. These are all my tabs for the read-along I was doing for this. This is one that I had been meaning to read for a long time. I feel like everybody who has read it loves it, and I'm not real sure how I feel about it. Quite honestly, by the time I got done with it, I was ready for it to be done. I was just like, the last 5 hours of the audiobook, I'm just like listening to it just to be done with it. I didn't really care anymore about it. There were certain parts of the book where I did care, and I really enjoyed certain plot lines and certain storylines, but by the last, like I said, 5 hours, 20% of the book, I just really didn't care anymore. I was ready for it to be over. It had lost its appeal anymore. But yeah, this is a story about the building of a cathedral. I feel like is what everybody says it is, but it's so much more than that. This is one that I, once again, will talk about more in my July wrap-up, so I'm not really going to say much more about it here, but I will talk more about it there. But yeah, this is just one that I just don't know. I think as soon as I finished it, I rated it 3 stars on Goodreads because I'm like, I just don't know. It was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. There wasn't anything wrong with it, but it wasn't anything that was like, yes, everybody read this either. So I think I still need to ponder and think on it a little bit more and try to come to terms with how I really feel about it. So anyway, that's the one that I am the most ambivalent about. All right, let's see. Next page. A is for Anticipation, a book you're very much looking forward to reading. And for this, I'm going to go with If You Want to Make God Laugh by Bianca Marais. This is another book by the author of If You Don't Know the Words, and it just came out this past week. I am anxiously awaiting for my library to get it because I did end up buying the physical copy of If You Don't Know the Words, but I bought it in paperback, which was probably not the smartest idea in hindsight, because now I'm going to want to get If You Want to Make God Laugh in paperback also, and that's probably not going to come out for another year. So I probably should have just bought in hardback, but it is what it is at this point. So I'm really waiting for my library to get a hold of this one, and hopefully we'll be reading it next month. But I am so excited to read Bianca Marai's writing again, more than anything else. If You Want to Make God Laugh is a story about 3 different women, and I believe it's set in South Africa after apartheid. Soon after apartheid has ended, and it's about each of these women kind of going through the aftermath of apartheid and getting their lives back together. And so that's my understanding of it anyway. I'm not really sure. I'm kind of going into this one blind, but honestly, after reading Bianca Marai's writing in If You Don't Know the Words, I really don't care. I would read anything that she wrote at this point because that's how much I loved her writing style. So this is definitely one that I am highly anticipating reading, and I'm hoping that I love it just as much as I loved If You Don't Know the Words. All right, A is for Actually, a book you didn't expect to like, but you did. And so for this, I'm going to say the graphic novel of Speak by Laura Halse Anderson. I think that's, Laura Halse Anderson. And this is one, I owned the book Speak years ago, and I had picked it up because it was when it had first come out, I think, and everybody had been talking about it, and I found a good deal at a used bookstore for it, and so I grabbed it, and then I ended up getting rid of it along the way. And never really thought about picking it up again. And then I was browsing through my library's graphic novel selection, and they had the graphic novel of it, and so I was like, what the heck, I'll grab it and see. I didn't really think I was gonna like it because I had read the first couple of chapters of the print book, and it didn't really click right away. It wasn't something I was itching to get to, so I just didn't know how I was gonna feel about it. But I read the graphic novel, and it was amazing. I loved this book so much, and so it was one that I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it, and I ended up giving it 5 stars and absolutely loving it. So that just goes to show that just because you didn't like the print version of something doesn't mean you won't like the actual story itself, whether it's a graphic novel or a TV or a movie adaptation or an audiobook even. Sometimes you just need to get it in a different way in order for you to appreciate it and to love it, because it's the same story, it's just told in a different way. And so anyway, that is definitely one that I didn't think I was going to really love as much as I did, and I really loved the graphic novel. So all right, next is A is for Affected, a character, book, or writer you feel is pretentious. And for this, I'm going to say one of the characters in the book Necessary Lies by Diane Chamberlain. This is one of my favorite books of last year. I loved this book. This book is set during the 1970s, maybe, in North Carolina, and it has to do with the eugenics movement. And during that time, North Carolina still allowed for the sterilization of different people. Unwillfully, they were being sterilized. And so it is told in 2 different perspectives. You get a 15-year-old girl's perspective who is very poor, living on a farm with her grandmother and her sister who is mentally retarded. Her sister has a baby, and so her grandmother is diabetic, and she's trying to take care of all these people, and she has epilepsy herself. And so you get her perspective, and then you also get Jane's perspective. And Jane is a newlywed who is working as a social worker, and she's going out and visiting these families, and it's her job to recommend people for sterilization if she thinks it is warranted. And so you just kind of get their 2 different perspectives on this topic, and it's absolutely fascinating. But Anyway, so that's the book. The character, though, that I thought was pretentious was Robert, who was Jane's husband in this book, and he was a jerk. We'll say that. He was not a nice person. He didn't want her to work. He didn't like her going out to the farm and being put in dangerous position. This was, in a time in history where women weren't expected to work. He was a doctor, I think, maybe, and so she didn't need to work. She wanted to work, and he was highly offended by that. He kept making comments about how she wasn't cooking for him and doing the wifely things that she was supposed to be doing. And anyway, he was just a world-class jerk, and he was not kind. But anyway, he was very pretentious. So there you go. There's my answer for that. All right. A is for how's it going? A book you liked by a Canadian writer or one you want to read. And this one, I don't have the book, but I have another book by this author. But the author is Jonathan Auxier, and the book that I have read is Sweep, which is amazing, and everybody should read it. It's a middle grade book set in Victorian London, and it's about a chimney sweep and her little goblin friend, and it is absolutely wonderful. I love it so much. But I do have Peter Nimble and His Fantastic Eyes, and this is another book by the same author that I have not read yet, and quite honestly, I'm not 100% sure what it's about. But once again, I love Sweep so much that I was really interested in picking up something else by this author. So this is the one I found at the thrift store, so this is the one I'm gonna check out first. All right, the next one is A is for Anticlimatic, a book you felt fizzled out at the end. And for this one, I'm going to have to say The Giver by Lois Lowry. This is one that I read during middle grade March this year, mostly because I had never read it before, and it's pretty thin. I had owned it for a while, but I had never read it. And so I just kind of wanted to check it off the list. This is a dystopian novel. I think it was written in the 80s, maybe. It's known kind of as one of the original dystopian books. Oh, 93. So it was written in 93. But anyway, and it is just kind of about what the world would be like if you didn't have any choices to make, if all your choices were made for you. And I enjoyed the premise of the book. And I enjoyed the book up until probably the last third of it. And then after that, it just went for me. I didn't get it. I didn't get the purpose of it. Maybe if I continued on, it's a quartet, I might get it, but I don't know if I will, because it didn't draw me in enough for me to want to understand. I didn't care. But anyway, so this is just one that kind of fell flat for me, and I didn't really love it the way that a lot of other people do. So anyway, and then the last one, number 13, is A is for all the booktubers, tag a bunch of people. And for this, I'm just going to say, if you want to do it, do it. If you haven't done it, do it, because it's just kind of something fun and different, and it makes you think about the books that you've read and in a little bit of a different way. Think more about the characters and how the books made you feel. But anyway, so that is the Alphabet Soup Tag Letter A edition. I hope that you enjoyed this, and that maybe I mentioned some books that you haven't heard of before, or something new that you'd like to check out. So if you have any comments about the books that I did mention, I would love if you would leave those down below, and I love just reading your comments and getting to interact with you that way. So please leave some comments for me. And other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya!